Greetings and welcome to the Mount Rushmore podcast. My name is Jeff, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friends Richard.
Hello.
And Michael.
Howdy.
Richard and Michael, they debate and deliberate the most ubiquitous aspects of any given topic, and this week is no different in that they are debating the Mount Rushmore of magic in movies. But it is different in that, abracadabra, we have a magical guest in the house. This is Christian Fitzharris. How are you, sir?
Doing very well. Great to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. Do you mind if I regale our audience with a quick primer in some of the things that you were interested in?
Fantastic, yeah.
Okay.
Christian,
yeah, this is a flavor. It's a amuse-bouche of the things he's into. Magic. He's a mentor on the #1 online site, Inside Deception. Juggling, esoteric Western mystery traditions, neuralistic programming, cults and religions. He's got over 2 decades of making hip-hop, is a certified sommelier, a mnemonist, and a clown. So this is pretty awesome to have you here, Christian. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here.
So you are also a hip-hop creator, and you have a persona named Scholar. And I had the privilege of delving into some of your videos and YouTube. You have a channel, I think it's youtube.com/Christian Fitzharris. But this is also a place where it seems like you can kind of point your hip-hop brain and poetic brain at just about any given topic. So tell us how you got into hip-hop before we get into magic.
Sure, no problem. The hip-hop started off, well, I came up at the perfect age to be interested in hip-hop. And growing up in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, Santa Clara, California, to be specific, during the 1980s into the 90s, but mostly the 1980s was a very good time for hip-hop in general, but also for being in the Bay Area where you had access to everybody in Berkeley and Oakland and San Francisco and the Bay Area hip-hop scene. So it was really just something that happened organically when MTV came out, and instead of hearing some music video that was a rock song, I heard Run DMC and wondered, how do they perform this mysticism with their voices? I heard rhyming, and I was very confused, and there were gold chains and black outfits, and I was very interested and enthralled. And from that point on, I have never stopped being enthralled with the entire thing. So then later on, I wanted to be able to access, since I was such a fan for so long of all hip hop songs, I started to introduce myself to new artists that were more abstract and interesting, like Kool Keith and Rakim and all this, and these old school kind of artists. And from there, I realized that Kool Keith was rapping about things that didn't make sense to anyone. So I might as well make sense to a small portion of the population with things that I'm interested in that are fairly eccentric and esoteric. So that's what I did. I started putting all of my interests that were weird and only appealed to a very small part of the population into a hip-hop format. And thus, the early days were born actually 30 years ago now that we're in 2021. So that's how it all started, which led to me, and my hip-hop experience then led to me being cast in the movie Sister Act 2 as the class nerd as well. So it all kind of goes off from there.
I was going to get to that, but that's really exciting. So that was 93. And then I haven't said this yet, but as part of your clowning CV, there's also creating a character and performing in the Cirque du Soleil Cuzo. And what year was that, and what was that experience like?
Sure. Cirque du Soleil was 2007 when we came out with a show. It was called Kooza, Kooza. And I co-created the 2 clown acts that are in that show that have been touring not North America, the entire globe, but it started off in North America and Canada in 2007. And then I toured with the show that we created for 5 years before disappearing about a decade ago.
Wow. I love your very nomadic, but yet exciting and engaged and artistic journey that you've been on. That's super cool. That's probably an understatement of the year. But at this
Christian,
point,
you appear to be the ideal person that you randomly talk to at a party. Because literally any type of person could just run into you and just fall into a conversation about anything random, and it would just be like, oh, holy crap, there's this guy that, what's he into? Oh, clowning. What's he into? Magic. What's he into? Oh, he was in Sister Act 2. What's he into? It's just hip hop. What's he into? It's just everything. You're like a walking bingo card. As a party guest. It's great.
Thank you very much for saying that. It's very funny because I've had actual people that I've worked with in different jobs for a while that said, you know what? Me and my friend over here, we looked you up last night online because we were thinking, what if he was just like the guy who makes up a bunch of stories about his life and he actually never done any of those things? We went down the rabbit hole for about an hour, and oh my God, everything you said was real.
That's like,
I mean, that's true too. You could be just a psychopath.
Yeah,
that's really good at the internet. Yeah.
When they pointed that out, I was thinking that's so funny because I don't think that way. Having been in show business for so long, I don't think of the new world, which is like the Instagram rapper. You can be whatever you want as long as you have the right pictures on your profile page. I don't think that way, and so now I feel like now, because those people have made me aware of it, I feel like I am lying in some way about no, this really happened. They're like, oh, either that's a lie or you're like the entertainment Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, it's all real though.
You're the verbal Kint, and we realized that, oh no, he is the Kaiser. He is Kaiser Soze after all.
It's been a fun ride.
Yeah. Well, at halftime, we can also talk about where people can learn more about your career. You also have interests that lead you into the world of being a certified sommelier. So I'm sure there's some more fun stuff to share about that. But we should probably get into the topic, which you are likely more expert upon the realm of stage magic and performing magic. I hope these guys can give you a challenge when it comes to the world of magic and film. At least they can take a stab at it. So, but you are our guest, Christian, so you go first. So we are discussing the Mount Rushmore of magic in movies. So what was the first topic you wanted to tackle?
Excellent. Well, the movie, and this is, I will throw this out here and I'll give everybody the option of debating it, because my number one was something that, after I thought about it a little bit, which is what's interesting about the format of your great show here, is once you start to analyze these things, you start to realize, wait a minute, do I like this for a reason that's not to do with what I'm actually looking at? I thought it was. And that has to do with my number one magic film, or, fantasy magic film, was The Matrix, which really is a simulation of computers, even though I've interpreted it my entire life as magic, where someone learns skills through a system, but in fact it might be just the simulation in a computer. So that's debatable. So I made a shifting number one based on that. But if I was going to stick with my basis of the Matrix, and I do believe that my choices will be things that none of you, I will be refreshed if anybody says anything, which I'm going to say. But my number one is The Matrix from the 1999 film, because it feels like magic throughout. It has philosophical systems. It has all of the systems of actually going through a Gnostic system where you have to experience every single portion in order for it to be to fully culminate in the direction you're headed. Meaning Neo could not move forward in the Matrix until he learned how to breathe, how to jump, all of the things that you are learning when you are practicing with your astral body in an esoteric Western mystery tradition system. Or again, the problem is, or is it because you're in a computer system? So here we are in the real life simulation ville, where is it magic? Is it a simulation? And is a simulation actually magic? We're going to get too deep too early, I think, on this, but I think it's debatable. But my number one is The Matrix, unless I am pushed off this Mount Rushmore cliff and then have to pull a life.
I love that choice. For me, if we applied kind of the field test to it, the other characters they're in the same simulation that he is, and they all see what he does as magic in it, or they respond to it with the ooh and ah that one would have when they're seeing magic being performed.
And there's even spoon bending.
Yeah, totally. Randy would have a field day, right?
Yeah.
So, guys, what do you? Does your BS-ometer go off, or do we feel like that's very much magic?
Well, I don't know. What is magic but science that you haven't proven yet?
Well, it's funny that the Christian had a very compelling kind of definition of what falls into magic. Christian, where do you grab that definition that you shared with us?
The definition of magic being one, originally the way it was retermed in the early 1900s was magic was the science and art of causing change in conformity with will. So this goes into the sort of New Age realm of setting intentions, but before there was called a New Age, there was practices by mystery schools and the ancient Rosicrucian mystery schools, as well as some mystic Christianity that would be you focusing on specific things, manifesting them in your life, or focusing on fire and you feel hotter and you're able to dry your body off out of the shower from just the focus of your energy. An initiatory system that would lead you through seeing a bunch of random symbols and markings that would be, and teach you even how to speak a new language. After all, the grimoire is just grammar. So if you're looking at magic in English, you are speaking spells, which is your spelling, and your grammar is your grimoire of which you're pulling. So I'm going to some of the classical contexts of magic as it was practiced in the early Western mystery tradition.
Well, okay. All right, man. That's super cool to have that context. So let's turn it over to our friends Richard and Michael.
All right. So there was a lot that we could choose from. This is obviously a very, as you said, it's definitely a broader topic than what we had thought of at one point. So Michael and I came up with some categories, as is our wont whenever we have a really large topic. Excuse me, edit that out. So we went into categories, as is our wont. And so our 4 categories are magical books, magical spells, magical objects, and dark magic. And so for the first one with magical books, I am going to talk about the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, as seen throughout the Evil Dead trilogy.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, I just love this idea of them inserting this book from noted racist H.P. Lovecraft's world into their world, and it kind of continues this tradition of authors and playwrights and filmmakers, including the Necronomicon, as part of their world, as if it's an actual book that they're drawing from as a source. And I think that part is fascinating to me. Obviously, I love the fact that this same book continues to bedevil and be the source of Ash's torment throughout the series, whether it's directly or kind of indirectly with him not being able to recite the final phrase correctly. And of course, the final phrase being from the day the earth stood still.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, that's the phrase that the robot... Yeah, that's the phrase that the robot comes out and says. So there's just a lot of neat little hidden messages and things in it. And I just love this idea that there's this book, like I said, that just throughout this interlocked trilogy that just continues to be a pain in the ass for this one poor guy.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I would also say that is given so much balance, the powers of this book and its occultish power is given so much balance by Sam Raimi's penchant for putting Ash through these perfectly slapstick Three Stooges moments. So there's
right.
kind of countered the import is kind of countered with this guy whose face is just made to be bashed by a 2x4 and
and
like Buster Keaton.
Often the book directly leads to that. And again, the fact that the Necronomicon was this invention of H.P. Lovecraft, this book that was created for his works, has this rich history of people. A Yale student created a library card for it and snuck it into the Yale library collection of the old book cards. And there's this whole history of kind of people taking it as a real book, like there really was something called the Necronomicon that H.P. Lovecraft was drawing from. So then you've got other artists who then went ahead and kind of continued that tradition. And to your point, I think it's great that this very serious sort of, Lovecraft, you think Lovecraftian, you don't necessarily think comedy, but yet here's this direct connection to, like you said, this sort of Three Stooges slapstick that kind of pops up in the middle of these Evil Dead movies.
And there's versions still coming out all the time of the Necronomicon, of the validity of the Necronomicon. I purchased a paperback copy of the Necronomicon in 1991. I was trying to purchase it, and the person in the bookstore said, "No, you can't."
What?
A very evil book. And I said, "Okay, I'll come back when you're not here." And so I did, and came back and purchased the Necronomicon paperback and read it and went, "Oh, okay. Well, this guy Abdul Al-Hazred really knows what's up." And time to go back on my lunch break and eat some ho-hos. And so I thought it was very interesting over the years, the study of and seeing its origination, and seeing that even when you search for it now, you'll see new copies, new translations have finally been unearthed from possibly Gobekli Tepe.
That's awesome.
What I think is interesting. Wait, Jeff. What I think is interesting about like the spell books in movies in general, and it's really hard to just kind of nail down one, is that there's like this duality to it. It's that there is this knowledge that a magician, is passing along to someone else, that there is like this relationship between a mentor and a student, but then also that there's just like, there's too much magic to know, so you have to write it down. And it's almost like that scene in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, when like Indiana is like angry at his dad for having written all that stuff down in the Grail diary, so he didn't have to remember it. He just had it, so he could always refer back to it. And I think spell books are like that. They're this like, oh, I need to teach the next generation, but at the same time, it's too much information. I'll just write it down. It's there. Someone else I can get back to it later.
Can I ask you, Christian, as a performer of magic, is there a connection that you feel when you see magic happening in a fantasy story? Is there some kind of connection that you draw between this ceremony that happens in a form of entertainment in the world that we inhabit, and then what you see on screen in these fantasy worlds?
Yeah, it's a direct correlation, because every magician who we can name was just trying to be that fantasy from the beginning of time, was trying to be that fantasy movie or fantasy character from the beginning of time. And it's all different takes on the same one. So, and it's been since the inception of like the fool or the jester, or the fool or the jester in the ancient tribes telling a story and performing a trick with some rocks and a stick. It's the same way unto generation. And that's one of the things that makes it grow so well, is we all have this. The only reason you've ever created a magic trick, if you're a David Copperfield or a David Blaine, is because of the fact that you want that idea, that string of storyline, to be real. I mean, even last year, David Blaine's Ascension was his dream that one day he could just grab a bunch of balloons like they do in a book or a movie and take off and fly through the sky. And then he did.
Oh, wow. That's super cool. That's a really interesting connection. I never really thought of it like that. So, Mr. Fitzharris, what is your second choice?
My second choice is, let's look at it, because it got so confusing here. Oh, right. That's right. The original The Craft.
Awesome.
Now, The Craft was a 1996 movie that
also on our also on our list, by the way.
Oh, cool.
Oh, good. The Craft was a 1996 movie, according to the last source, even though you turn a page and then it's a year later, with Nev Campbell and Fairuza Balk, which is funny because, then they form a band off of her name, which you might know more about that than I do. But that's one of my favorite actual magic. That was a confident choice. It's one of my favorite movies. It has a lot of the tarot cards that are in the store, the same ones that you were using as an occultist or a practitioner of Wicca or a tarot reader. You got to see a lot of the actual things that people in real life are using in the mystery tradition or the psychic world. And so there was a basis of that with the fantasy and the ability for magic to get out of control. So that's still one of my favorite movies overall, as just, put it in the background and have it going. And I just found out that there was a new one released, so I look forward to getting disappointed by that.
What drew you to The Craft, Richard and Michael?
Well, for me, I think that there is, this fell under our kind of dark arts, black magic category. And I think I'm intrigued by magic gone wrong, or magic having these like dire consequences. Usually magic is used to kind of be a shortcut at times, as displayed in movies. But in The Craft, there's like just there's this revenge angle that isn't, the movie's about these four girls in high school who kind of are all these outcasts for various reasons, whether their ethnicity or kind of their physical appearance, or they're new to school, or in Fairuza Balk's case, her character Nancy, she's just like this psycho hillbilly, ideal person that like what's his name? Rob Zombie would be like into at some point. But there are these characters that are like out for some sort of revenge against those who have done wrong to them. And of course it comes back to bite them all. And I think that is very intriguing when talking about magic, is that there's like this otherworldly power you can tap into, but if you don't respect it, whatever it is comes back to get you. And it kind of does to all of the girls except for Sarah, the main girl, who kind of sees past the dark ways and gets past it and really embraces like whatever the truth of what is it, Mammon, or whatever the magical
that's right.
is. And I think this movie just captures that sort of revenge fantasy really well, as well as just showing fun, cool.
And if all you had to
chicks.
do was steal a book from a bookstore, then you can do all this. I mean, that's pretty enticing.
Yeah.
This much reviled Wonder Woman 84 film shows the darker side of wish fulfillment, and thinking of a wish as being somewhat of like a magic spell or a incantation that has some importance behind it, and it is a ancient crystal or something that weaponizes their wishes in this film. And then every DC comic is really this moralistic tale with a comeuppance at the end. And I wonder, Christian, do you find it common in these tales of magic that the misuse of magic has a related punishment?
Oh yeah, and that comes from the actual tradition of, the warnings that were given you from the beginning of time. You can use this power, but with that power comes great responsibility. And so even people who are performing Western magical traditions, who are, performing ceremonies of purification and energy workings and all of this, using their chakras, And if they ever do anything that's called white magic, or they send a purpose out into the world, they at the end do something that's called a release, where they say, I now release any spirits that have been imprisoned by this ceremony. Go back to thine own abodes. So there is, in actual practice from the so-called magic community, this practice. And I mean, we can all go back to to Fantasia, right? And see how those brooms get totally out of control.
They totally do. And
I mean,
For sure.
consequences are grave with books, Necronomicons, and brooms.
Mm-hmm. That's a fun tie-in that Sam Raimi was just kind of ripping off Walt Disney there, right there. There is so we are at our halftime right now, and I just want to remind people that they have the opportunity to go out and download, rate, and review past episodes of the Mount Rushmore podcast on any place where you get podcasts. And the rate and review part would be really helpful for us, because we have a dialogue ongoing via Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook with our listeners. But we love more information. We love to find out what you like, what you go, meh, I don't know what we like. We love this Christian Fitzharris guy. More guys like him, please. Or don't do these other subjects that you do. They're really boring. So we would love any kind of information you can give us about that. We're talking about magic, and there's a trick, where you pull a rabbit out of a hat, and that's this magic. But there's also this trick in real life where you put wine into a bottle. You put spirits into a glass encasement. And as a sommelier, Christian, do you find that there is a lot of alchemy and magic in that field?
Absolutely. You have, in the wine world specifically, you have, like you said, the literal putting of a spirit into a bottle, which people then imbibe as if a potion that gives you life, circulation, and the lubrication of the tongue, which comes forth and is able to let you talk forever about passionate projects and perhaps incite the heart to getting into fights in a number of different ways. But in addition to that, most basic level of the wine world, you have a rich history that comes from the geography, the climate. You are literally taking things that you've planted, seeds that you've planted. They grow. They grow under sunlight. They grow due to the rain, the diurnal shifts, the everything. The actual soil or terroir is all pulled into the process, so that when you taste the wine, you can actually, as a sommelier, you can quantify what it is. And you can say, well, this is obviously a Washington Pinot or Washington Cabernet because of X, Y, and Z that comes from the climate. Or this is a Cabernet from Napa Valley because it's more sunny. So you have actual, in addition to that, you have the art, you have the culture, you have everything that humanity has built into it, into this grape, and then offered to people as a potion that they can partake in. So it's a far and wide-ranging topic that kind of gets real deep real quick, unless you're just at a party trying to, unleash the spirit.
Wait, so this information, earlier on, you're talking about a website that I thought had the word bottle in it. Is that right?
Yes, my website is bottleburner.com.
What can people find there?
Usually it's performances that I've done recent. I'm very active in the online musical performance community, doing poetry and esoteric hip hop, like everyone these days. And and in addition to that, I've posted a lot of different things I've written for wine writing contests, music videos for my scholar personality, which is mostly literary or magical esoteric material. In addition to that, there's some stuff from clowning and Cirque du Soleil on there. So it's basically a hub of a polymath vaudevillian.
Oh, that's super cool. Let us know the website again. And is it spelled any weird way?
I learned when I took on the hip hop moniker Scholar to spell it traditionally. Otherwise, people get really confused why someone named Scholar couldn't spell his own name. So I spell bottleburner.com as BOTTLEBURNER.com.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So why don't we move on? We have the third choice coming from Christian.
So my third choice was also a debatable choice because, like he said, this is such a wide-ranging topic. But my solid third choice, which may seem weird in hindsight, is The Ninth Gate. The Ninth Gate from 1999, directed by Roman Polanski, starring Johnny Depp. After I've watched this hundreds upon hundreds, if not thousands of times, enjoying the dark art aspect of it. And it wasn't until preparing for this podcast that I realized, wait, this movie's just about a Satanist who kills a bunch of people. So in hindsight, I go, is this a magic movie? Because even though it's been a magic movie for me for over 20 years, upon reflection, I go, wow, didn't see that coming. I was so excited about the satanic references and the occult community that was involved that goes generation onto generation in the lands of France. But I hadn't realized that it's not actually too much. It's mostly murder that you don't see. so begrudgingly, I stick with my choice as The Ninth Gate, even though I realize that it's not necessarily as magical as I had thought in 1999 and until yesterday.
Oh, so the whole Roman Polanski thing didn't scare you off. It's the murder.
Yeah. Well, I've already adapted to Rosemary's Baby, and then
okay.
and I have a personal and if it didn't scare me off, I don't know who it wouldn't scare off, because my paycheck is actually designated by what Whoopi Goldberg says on The View.
Oh,
so
funny.
And she has a famous quote regarding banning him and controversial statements regarding Roman Polanski, which then every large portion of the population said we shouldn't watch her movies anymore. So I still like the movie in spite of the fact that it may or may not be affecting my actual income every 6 months.
So let me ask you this. So in some of our earlier discussion or pre-show discussion, brought up the fact you've been an occultist for. You were also on Sister Act 2 is on Disney Plus now. So
that's where all the hip occultists appear.
Yeah, totally. Occultist. What is something people may assume or maybe not understand about someone who calls himself an occultist?
Well, number one, there's not very many business cards for occultism.
Or the Hallmark section is limited.
Yeah. Occult just means the unknown. So what people may not know is that occult means the unknown. So if we were to take things very literally, the occult is what is unknown and trying to be proved or may not be proved down the line. But it's usually something that commonly in pop culture is affiliated with something dark, ominous. I mean, that's part of its attraction as well. So we can't, have one without the other. So occultism is the study or the interest of things that may seem to be clouded and dark and shady, while at the same time you might study those things and find out, well, this is just memorizing some names and visualizing colors. It can all be broken down to a very basic thing. So it's very individual how people interpret these things, but there is a shroud of mystery and possible sinister things, just as we were talking about the Necronomicon is something that is considered very sinister, even though created by a literary giant.
Okay. Yeah, it seems also the occult. Without the occult, we would not have so many awesome album covers from many decades of popular music.
Yeah.
Okay, Richard and Michael, what is your third choice?
All right, so our third choice is the magical object category, and it is the sorcerer's hat from the previously mentioned Fantasia.
Right
the
on.
Sorcerer's Apprentice short.
Cool.
Segment, whatever you want to call it. I just love this idea that the magic to some extent comes from the clothes. It's a very literal sort of representation of, do the clothes make the man? In this case, did the clothes make the sorcerer? And this idea that Mickey, as the sorcerer's apprentice, can, by putting on the hat, suddenly have these powers that the actual sorcerer has, albeit not with the ability to control it fully. And that's sort of what makes the difference between someone who is a sorcerer versus an apprentice. And I think that that's just, we have these movies and lore about wands and, Harry Potter with the Elder Wand. And that's one thing that, we could talk about. Or, there's this idea that, does the magic come from the person? Does it come from these objects? Is it a combination of the two? And, obviously I think that it's an incredibly charming, one of the most charming pieces of animation ever constructed. And we could talk about that as well. But I just love this idea that, the like I said, the clothes kind of do make the sorcerer in this case.
Yeah.
That's cool. I think even think in the most kind of cuddly, charming way, we just got through kind of the Christmas season, and Frosty the Snowman has a hat in it that brings 3 balls of ice to life. To entertain some kids. So yeah.
And this is like you mentioned earlier, Jeff, with the where the crossover between prestidigitation magic and the fantasy magic kind of come into play, because magicians, this has been a classic. I mean, the objects imbuing supernatural power is a wellspring of magic material for everyone. And that's what's so interesting. Much like a ventriloquist will make a lifeless puppet come to life. And it's a weird thing to deconstruct and think about, but ventriloquism is really a guy who wants to talk to himself, and then he uses a puppet and then makes it look interesting and charming. And in the end, we start to believe in the magic of the puppet. And just the same in the magic community, when you're performing, like David Copperfield or anything, you can say, I have here it's always my grandmother's ancient item, which is warm and wonderful. And that's the closing of having performed in Las Vegas for 5 years. That's the ending of every magic show is, my grandmother gave me this wonderful blank, and it made this happen. And then all the snow falls from the sky and everybody laughs as the motivating music comes on. But it is one of the more powerful things that the practicing sleight of hand artist and magician have, is to take the skill of which they've spent years mastering and then give credit to some inanimate object and go, this is my magical ring, which does incredible things that it only took me 3 years to learn.
That's funny. I saw that the Skirball Center had an exhibit on Houdini and some other. That's a local gallery, or
yes,
I don't know what you call it, a museum. And I'm trying to think of how this was. There were multiple magicians. It wasn't just about Houdini, but about essentially magic as performed in the vaudeville era. And when we think about the attire that Yensid, the sorcerer, wears, and that Mickey, when he takes on the sorcerer identity, wears, that attire was presented in this exhibit as the old kind of hokey outfit that a stage magician would use to adopt an Eastern persona. And it would be very convenient because it would have many, many voluminous sleeves for one to hide gadgets and tricks and things up inside. And then what I did not know was that the attire that Harry Houdini and some of the other people wore, a tuxedo, was chosen not as we see it today as a grand piece of clothing, but as something that any male in the audience would have been wearing, that it was right. Everyday clothing, at least for theater goers. So
I will now dress in the everyday clothing of my 3-piece suit and tuxedo.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this, that apparently originally Mickey being the Sorcerer's Apprentice was not the case. It was supposed to be Dopey, which is
that right?
part of the reason why even though the character change, the wardrobe is a little bit Seven Dwarfs esque.
Oh yeah, it sure is. I work for a large entertainment company that is represented by a mouse, and we just created some entertainment around. I think it's the 80th anniversary of Fantasia or something like that. And from an entertainment, magic, and technology standpoint, there was so much aspirational intent behind that film. Walt wanted essentially smell-o-vision, to light sulfur and bring flowers into the theaters to create fragrances for the flower scene. And Fantasound was the earliest commercial use of some cinematic surround application. So there was just very, very magical presentation, at least to theater goers at that time. So it's cool.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Okay, so why don't we move on to the final choice from our friend Christian?
Yes, my final choice is actually something that wasn't in the 1990s, finally. And this one is a film that just came out in 2016. It's called Doctor Strange.
I love that movie.
Now, this was such a thrill because I was, obviously I was already in with him playing Sherlock Holmes. So then to go to Doctor Strange, I mean, duh, please, you already got me. Anyways, fantastic storyline. Skeptic becomes practitioner, the classic ruse, and has to go to a mystical country where things are all different, and you have to be beaten down into a system where you can learn and practice one exercise at a time to learn the skills. And you've got your magic books there, right? He gets the magic book out from the back that is forbidden.
Yeah, for sure.
Has all of these magic books. So he gets the forbidden object, just like the Necronomicon and everything else, and he starts getting busy with it. And then next thing you know, he's got a living cape, and he's learning how to take on and save the whole world. So I not only is it colorful, and growing up as a kid reading the comic books and going, of course, I want to be a magician. I want to learn magic and wear cool capes and do things that impress people. It takes me way back, and then having it not be a horrible movie was just a bonus.
Did you feel like they captured the Doctor Strange of the comics?
Well, to be honest, I'm not a comic scholar.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Neither.
I'm not an authority.
Neither am I, and certainly not on that character. I know how happy I was with the film, and then going to a comic store and just hearing a guy rag on it because they didn't. I think Strange has so much of his identity that it's about being like eternal. Part of his, I think the curse that goes along with being a sorcerer supreme is the amount of karmic suffering that he has to absorb throughout his career. And in the film, there's a final scene where he gets basically murdered 100 million times. We don't know how many times, but this person was kind of complaining that there was components of his comic identity. Any comic book nerd is going to complain that the film didn't do everything that 6 decades of a comic character did. But I was just curious to hear about that. But from the magic part, it was very satisfying to you.
Absolutely. It was visual. Everything magic aspires to be is in that film. Magic in person aspires to be visual, colorful, engaging, story-driven, and awe-inspiring. In just entrapping the person that you're doing the magic for, the audience, the person, the television audience, the entire world online. That's all you're looking for is storyline, color, magic, taking people to another place. When I'm streaming David Blaine last year, Ascension, in a hotel room while I'm trying to, I'm supposed to be getting in the car to go somewhere. I'm in the passenger seat and I'm still watching it to see the buildup and the drama and the storyline of this trick. That's basically, that's what everybody could possibly ever hope for in real world prestidigitation, stage magic, and sleight of hand.
Mm-hmm. Cool. You Michael is a big comic guy. I know Richard reads him.
Yeah.
Or you as a Doctor Strange MCU fan?
I thought it was great. One of the aspects that's really wonderful about Doctor Strange in particular is that, he's a magician who breaks his hands, or he's a surgeon that breaks his hands and turns to magic. And just the idea of a magician having this weird, limited, having to do magic with hands that tremble and having to master that, I think is an interesting little aspect of his character that they captured really well. I'm obviously not a magician and not a close-up hand magician either, and I can imagine that would be just for someone that does sleight of hand work. Like that aspect of Doctor Strange, I think is really lost, where you just see this. He really has to overcome a lot. Obviously, he can't go back to becoming a surgeon, but he can master it enough to, conjure spells. And I think that they did such a good job of him. Marvel is not for want of characters who have huge egos that are brought down to size and have to rethink their lives. Certainly Iron Man for one. But I think that they did it really well with him. He comes off as such an asshole. And then later on, he kind of continues to be an asshole, which is super great
and realistic.
Yeah.
On the sleight of hand magic front and the challenge of overcoming things, real quick, I wanted to add that there is, and I can't pull out their names, unfortunately, because it's been a couple of years since I've reviewed some of the material. But there is a blind magician who's in his 60s, it has to be, who's fantastic, and he's gotten a lot of press, and I think he has a documentary on Netflix, as well as being interviewed on the Tim Ferriss podcast. But I can't, obviously you just type blind magician into Google and
I saw that. Yeah, that he's mostly card work, right?
Yeah, he does lots of card work. And then there's a sleight of hand magician who barely has hands. I think his name is Ismad. I'm going to mess it up. So anyways, the sleight of hand magician who doesn't have, he has more like, he doesn't have fingers. He only has a couple different places, and he still does sleight of hand magic and kills and does shows and even has instructional videos on how you can learn to do magic as well as the guy who has less fingers than you.
Wow.
And that is like one of those things that, there's a number of different sleight of hand magicians and magicians out there who they love magic so much, and they love performing and connecting with people, that they've overcome even these fairly drastic situations. So I just wanted to mention that real quick, because we talk about that, and it's mirrored in movies such as this.
Mm-hmm. I think another element that I wish would have been incorporated into this film was the fact I learned that Doctor Strange was patterned after David Niven. And I only wish Benedict Cumberbatch would have done a David Niven impersonation throughout the entire film, including the thriller laugh.
Yes.
Okay, Richard Michael, I would say you need to pull a rabbit out of a hat. You need to do something amazing, because Christian has really been outclassing you here. So your fourth choice is very important. What do you got?
Here it comes.
Well, this is hard because Jeff, even though I know you are a novice to the Harry Potter movies.
Oh yeah.
I know that you watched at least one of them recently within the last few months, and I don't know if you watched more than one.
I think I was watching the first one as J.K. Rowling's was being canceled on the internet. So,
gotcha. Well, what we did is we needed a magic spell, and we chose, I guess, what seems to be the most iconic spell from that series of books, and then also the series of movies, which is the Expelliarmus spell that Harry Potter uses, and it becomes like his signature spell. It's one that he uses to disarm other wizards, and it seems to be the most important to him as someone that is fighting evil but doesn't want to do anyone actual harm. And he first uses it in this film, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, where he learns it as like part of a dueling club. And what is fascinating about the Harry Potter world and movies and universe and what have you is that there's so much thought that's put into like these magic words. And that seems to be something that is kind of a, be it very classical things like abracadabra or hocus pocus, to kind of have the kind of the lame things that people say to turn a fake wand into, fake flowers. There's a lot of just really intricate work that's done within the movies to craft a world that that just utters these magic, weird words all the time. And that combined with like a wave of the wand and the person actually having some sort of innate magic in them. And, magic is very interesting. It's more than just reading books. It's more than just having a magic wand. It is also saying some incantation that, that one uses to create this thing. It's like this trigger to all these different things happening at the same time, whether it's, like I said, the wand, the wizard, and the magic spell. Saying this thing is important. And I think that the character of Harry Potter kind of holds on to it for so long because he's good at it, but two, he's the hero of the stories. He's not, there are other times in the story where he uses other magic spells to hurt people, and it really backfires on him and really kind of exposes he's going down a dark path for at least, one or two movies or whatever. But he always comes back to this thing that it's like his catchphrase. It's like saying, I don't know, it's clobbering time, basically, or like Hulk smash or Avengers Assemble. There's a thing that Harry Potter says. It's like, oh yeah, that's the thing that other wizards use, but it's not quite the same as when it comes from him.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where Michael, I believe in the battle of the Seven Potters. Do I have the correct number on that? Yeah, where
or something like that. Yeah,
where there's all these different Harry Potters that have been magically created to try and get him from his parents' house to another different safe house, and they're able to find. If I remember correctly, they're able to figure out which one is the real Harry Potter because he's the one who uses Expelliarmus. And that that's kind of a tip off. That's kind of a tip off. So not only is it his calling card, it winds up becoming to some extent a bit of a crutch.
Yeah, that's funny too.
Why is that important to you, Michael? Or why do you observe that as just because it's a compelling character trait for this person who didn't get into the business to hurt anybody? He's
defined. He's also defined by his opposite. The lead villain in it is Voldemort, who kind of almost exclusively uses these horrible killing curses and things. And even when Harry is faced against Voldemort, in like their big final battles, he still can't say the thing. He can't utter a spell to kill anyone or to do anything. He utters this thing to disarm him, to take this person's power away. And of course, through a lot of other Michigas and kind of, going back to the very first thing that Christian said, Harry Potter is, quote, the one in this movie where he has the power to come back from being dead, and he has the power to have been the one that rejected to be unkilled by Voldemort the first time, and has the power of his wand taking over another wizard's wand. All of the things that he kind of has. He is the one in these movies. The thing that he still can't do is intentionally try to kill a person. He still tries to disarm them, and that ultimately is what Harry Potter's about. He's about saving the day versus killing the bad guy. Yeah, the bad guy dies anyway. Spoiler alert. What are you going to do?
Whoops.
Are you a Potter fan, Christian?
I wouldn't say a fan. I'm very familiar with it because the occult community had to become attributed to it, and the magic world, prestidigitation, the Magic Castle in Hollywood, etc., also had to take it in mind, because now the world finally came to them. The storyline had come to them, where everybody in the world wanted to see magic, and as long as you put on a little Harry Potter scarf, then they were going to book you for the next show. And it didn't matter if you were doing what type of magic you were doing. As long as you were doing it in a Harry Potter outfit, you would get booked for anywhere in the world. And so it was a good thing. And then you had people in the occult community picking it apart, going, okay, I attended actual classes in secret occult organizations that had focused on the Harry Potter theme and what's the downfall of this pop culture phenomenon, as well as what can we take from it that's a positive. And one of those things is obviously outreach. If you're going to be doing, anybody wants to attend a esoteric mystery school, well, you're in luck, because there's still a lot of esoteric mystery schools out there, and the internet and the dark web is a great place to find them. But also connecting what Michael was talking about with Harry's disarming spell was interesting too, because basically Harry's disarming spell is the Aikido of spells, right? In the Chamber of Secrets, he uses these magic words. Well, and you even mentioned abracadabra. Well, abracadabra, the original creation of the word abracadabra was, and I should go into really quickly, the reason why everything was spelled out and is a magical word, is because of the fact that it has the correct, or the culmination of letters which mean or equal different numbers and different energies, whether zodiacal, planetary, etc., so that you are harnessing an actual force or power in a specific direction, right? So abracala was one of the original Hebrew forms of abracadabra, and abracala spelled out in Hebrew equaled 526. So therefore, that meant you were accessing the power of the word, right? Which was originally used. Abracadabra was a magical word actually used by whatever you want to call them, psychics, magicians of old, to cure fevers and to ward off the plague. So really, during these times, we should have more abracadabra out in the world. While you're socially distancing, maybe abracadabra a little bit more as well. So there you go. There's a link of how magic spells work, Harry's disarming spell, and even the word abracadabra was something that was meant to heal and protect you.
Oh, dude, that's the coolest thing in the world. That's pretty awesome enlightenment. That is so funny to think that, it's like, let's say you're in the small town Kansas, like where I'm from, and there's a movie about sushi. Now everybody wants it, and you're the only sushi chef in town, but everybody's coming to you. They want to have one roll. Like, there's a lot of other things. Nah, we're just gonna get this one thing. You're glad that they
the mysterious Far East, this delicious product.
Yeah, we're glad they're here, but we wish they would have came before, and maybe they could open up their palate to a broader range of tastes. So, well, Christian, you've been a blast as a guest. So thank you so much for lending all your insight to this. What was it like to be a magician in Vegas for 5 years?
Well, technically, I wasn't. I was hanging out with magicians. I was doing comedy in Las Vegas, but that's okay. I was doing magic act in the Cirque du Soleil show. So it all comes about somewhere in my Forrest Gump resume. In any case, it was fantastic. I performed at the MGM Grand for a few years, and was there. And one of the best things, it was one of the best times of my life, because in that period, which was 2004, I was there from 2004 to 2007 or so, 3 years. Okay. And you hung out. Vegas, it feels like it's a gigantic city, but it's really just one block of entertainment. And then the rest of the city, they actually have real jobs and lives. So what you have is the one block and of working entertainers on the strip. And what ends up happening is everybody hangs out together, everybody talks, everybody goes to picnics together. So you're always hanging out with Penn and Teller and Lance Burton, and world's greatest magicians and comedians are all at the little party barbecue because we don't have anybody else to hang out with. And, we have a lot of stuff we want to brainstorm and create. So it was one of the best periods of my life, and I was very active there. I got to perform 6 nights a week at the MGM Grand, get off, only work for 3 hours, and of that, only do 2 6-minute acts, and then get off work at midnight and perform hip-hop, occult hip-hop stuff downtown and in clubs for the rest of the night, and then wake up and have another 20 hours off until I had to be at work again while I was collaborating with a lot of great magicians and comedians and everything. So it was really one of my favorite times of my life.
Yeah, sounds great. Okay, so Michael and Richard are not about to have a good time of their life. They're not, because I'm just going to say, dudes, you got 1 point. You got the point for the craft. So congratulations, but also
I'm gonna be reporting you to your work that you did not choose. Choose Fantasia.
Are you serious? Look,
I have a strongly worded letter pre-written.
I will also say that Fantasia is there a sleeper spell in Harry Potter? Because it puts you right to sleep outside of the sorcerer segment. Oh my God. Oh, come on.
It's the music.
It's the music. Yeah. You know that when Fantasia premiered, Americans had not seen the Nutcracker. Although they're hearing that music from it in Fantasia, the ballet had not premiered in the U.S. until I think 1944 in San Francisco somewhere. So
that's wild.
Nobody saw the ostrich dancing with the alligator and thought, "Oh, this reminds me of the Nutcracker." They just heard this Tchaikovsky stuff for the first time. Crazy.
That's incredible.
So Richard and Michael, you each get a point, but so does Christian getting that point for the craft. And I'm going to give the rest to him because they were a lot of fun. The Matrix being the movie that made everyone buy a DVD player for sure. And The Ninth Gate, I got to go check that out. And I love me some off-screen homicides. And then Doctor Strange. So those are the Mount Rushmores for the Mount Rushmore of magic in the movies.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for being on our show, Christian. Remind our audience where people can find you.
You can find me on Facebook at Christian Fitzharris. I'm a public page, as well as on my website, bottleburner.com. And the Scholar 93 SoundCloud has a bunch of esoteric, bizarre hip-hop stuff as well. And then you just can type in Christian Fitzharris and wander down the weird rabbit hole of which people end up when they search my stuff. So been a real pleasure. Thank you so much, Michael and Richard and Jeff.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So this has been the Mount Rushmore of Magic in the Movies. I, as always, am Jeff.
I'm Richard.
I'm Michael.